Why is feminism relevant to men? It's clear that in our society, in many, many workplaces, and indeed in our homes, there is a level of inequality. In our workplaces and in our society, we're very much male-dominated. And in our homes and in our families, we're quite often female-dominated. If we want to live in a world that is fair and equal, which I do, then feminism is relevant to men. Because the only way we're going to move towards a more equal world, more equal workplaces, more equal societies, and more equal homes is by recognizing that feminism is relevant to us all. But how does feminism benefit men? When I'm talking about this, I often use 3 pillars and 1 responsibility. The 3 pillars, the 3 benefits to men, I'll come on to. First of all, we need to recognize them as men, particularly men in the workplace. We're often given a reason to be involved and to be allies, to step up to inclusion as the business case. I think that goes well beyond just a business case. There are huge benefits to men of equality, of feminism. The first pillar, if we're talking about the workplace, is equality. I don't want to work in an environment where people are promoted, get opportunities, are heard, not heard, based on their gender. I don't want to work in a monoculture of people who look and think exactly like me. Frankly, inclusive environments are much better environments to work in. They're much nicer environments to work in. They're more fun, as well as being more productive. You're more likely to work for a boss who got there on merit. You're more likely to have your voice heard. The second pillar is around health and well-being. Inclusive societies and inclusive workplaces, all the research shows, are happier, healthier places to be. Feminism, therefore, benefits everybody. You're more likely as a feminist to have better relationships, both in the workplace and outside, a more fulfilling life, less mental stress and more mental well-being, more laughter, more enjoyment, better relationships with your wife. I'm all for that, if that's what you call feminism. My third pillar is opportunity and choice. I don't want to wind the clock back, do you, to a time when we as men had to comply with certain male stereotypes. We had to behave in a certain way, and certain things were restricted from us. I want to live in a world where if I choose to be a stay-at-home dad, I can do that without social ostracization or people looking down on me for it. I want to live in a world where I can bring myself, my whole self, to work. I want to live in a world where I don't need to drink warm beer and play golf if that's not what I want to do. I don't want to live in a world where I have to follow my father's footsteps. I want to live in a world where I can be the type of father I want to be and the type of husband I want to be. I want all of those freedoms. So my 3 pillars are the workplace and the benefits to men of an inclusive workplace, not just the business case, but how those places are much better to live in and work in. The health and happiness benefits of feminism, and the opportunity and choice that's given us. My 4th thing I'd like to bring up is actually responsibility. For decades now, years, almost over a century, in fact, women, ever since the suffragettes, feminists, have been fighting for and demanding change. They've died for it. Gradually over time, we've seen changes. Those changes we as men have benefited from, as in some of the ways that I've already described. But for the great number of men, we haven't actually lifted a finger to drive that change forward. I see we are now at a point in history where we have the greatest opportunity that we've ever had to bring this discussion to an end. But to bring it to an end, we need all of us, men and women, walking side by side over that finishing line. So let's do it together. Let's work to ensure that the inequalities, the few choices, the lack of choice of the past, the unfairness of the past are put behind us, and we can move on and stop talking about gender, stop talking about feminism, and start talking about a wonderful, happy society that we live in. Have I always embraced feminism? I think this is an interesting one. I talk to a lot of men in my role as CEO of Men for Inclusion. And I see a number of different personas in the men that I talk to. There are those that, yes, just don't get it. There are a large group of men who are doing this, particularly in the workplace, to comply with workplace targets and initiatives, to be seen as a good employee. When I talk to the next group of men, they often talk about their strong female role models in their lives, their wives, their mothers, their daughters, who are beginning increasingly to make them think and understand and be a feminist themselves. I'm one of them. I was brought up in a household where I was just as likely to see my father doing the ironing as my mother. I was brought up in a household where I was expected to do the dishes and learn to cook and sew and all of those things that are traditionally taught to your daughters. Whilst my sister and I were both taught how to change the tyre on the car, how to use a screwdriver and a hammer, and how to do those traditional male things. That stood me in good stead, particularly when I entered the workplace in the 1970s and saw a demarcation of work. All the women in the business seemed to be in the typing pool or sitting on reception. But I looked up at all the men who were in leadership positions, and none of them looked like me. They didn't have my background. So yes, I've always been a feminist. However, I also admit that I have deeply ingrained male characteristics, and that I make mistakes accidentally. But I do allow people to encourage people to call me out when I make them. Thank you.